straight before this one, but it's been a little bit mixed around. But I was talking a lot about some of the barriers that we've come across, some of the things that we've seen challenge local authorities. Now we're going to talk about some ideas and some solutions and things to some of those problems. So we're going to talk about how to form strategies and solutions that can actually achieve some of these challenge goals. So here is, we're going to talk about why this strategy and technology, the skills we need to converge to create change, how you can form a viable strategy, why a well-designed portal and effective search tool is a route to success, and then how to affect change on a long-term basis within your organisations. At this point, I'd like to introduce Dave Moody. He's the Senior Vice President of Government Solutions at Variant. You may also know as Kana or Lagan. They're a partner of Squiz in our local government solution. He's going to be co-presenting with me today. So I'd like to hand over to Dave now to get started with our first question.
So, well, you've already seen, I suppose, the answers from the survey, but can I maybe have a show of hands here? So, well, first of all, let me ask the first question. Would anyone in the room say they've achieved the channel shift they need to today? Hands up. No? So just in terms of some of the issues that might be preventing you from achieving that, who would say budget is one of the constraints? Hands up. That's okay. That's not. It's less than what, a third, 20% maybe. Not okay. No, everyone. What about technology? Hands up if that's a constraint for you. Hardly any. Okay. Right. Integration's been mentioned several times. There's different aspects of that. The hands up with integration would be an issue. Oh wow, that's that's a lot. Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. What about leadership? You may not want to put your hand up for this. Okay, that's quite a lot too. Okay. Obviously, you saw earlier the results of a survey, and I guess there's some things that resonate with you. Any big areas though that I haven't mentioned? Oh no, one of the elements, sorry, skills. Skills. We touched. There was a question about this earlier on. Anyone here who thinks skills is a limitation? Hands up. Okay. Again, not a good number. Not more than 50%. Okay. Any one area to shout out that I haven't mentioned that's a big burning? Okay, right. So
actually building services that people can use.
Okay. Yeah. Fundamental. Yeah, fundamental. Okay. And yes.
Monolithic application systems that get people in particular mindsets that they can't get out.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Very good. This whole one point I'm making is this whole channel shift journey, or digital first journey, as we call it. We're asking you questions. We ask ourselves the same question, just so you're aware. So we're looking always to strive to get to that next stage as well. So getting to some of the ideas that we have. So people, we heard of this already from Estonia. What a fantastic presentation! I'm sitting there thinking I'm pretty jealous of that. But this idea of invisible government. That it shouldn't be, obviously, the customer shouldn't have to know. One aspect of that is that the customer citizen shouldn't have to know where to go to find information. They shouldn't be aware that they're talking to one particular department. It should be pretty seamless, and particularly when you've got those services that do cross those departmental areas. And we heard in the second point there this idea of ease of use, and somebody mentioned it in the audience as well. That is so fundamental. I'll come back to that point in a moment. But this idea that it should be, you want to make your services online easier to use than the alternative. One thing that I hear quite a lot, I have a global remit, so I get to do a lot of work in the States and in Canada, here and in Australia. Let's see. And I hear more often than not, it's too easy for a customer to pick up the phone and talk to us. So you've got to think about how you flip that on its head. So it's much easier for them to do business with you online, and how do you do that? And that is about this idea of devising strategies that unite your organization digital first, which we're talking about today. So one of the things that you need to do, and again, this is a very simplistic view of it for sure, and I'm sure everyone's got some form of strategy in place today with the word digital in it. Somewhere. Has anyone not got a strategy with the word digital in it? Hands up. Okay, so what's your strategy called? I should know this one. Okay, well, digital's in the title. Well, the digital, okay, fair enough. And yourself? Okay, okay. But does everyone else genuinely have digital in their strategy name? That's a yes? Okay, there you go. So that's what I see a lot. I mean, that's the same in every company. So everyone's doing it, but everyone's probably at different stages. In the same breath, I'll talk to somebody, or the same day, I'll talk to somebody who's got no budget at all and doesn't have a department. So I heard a comment earlier about my companies do it yourselves, and you're doing it yourselves and later. But there's an awful lot of other companies that don't have any money left. I hear that quite a lot. So there's a disparity between budgets within local government, and that can create a challenge as well. But if we look at those simply put, what are the 5 areas? Well, the citizen's got to be at the heart of it. But there's this idea as well, we talk about citizen. I talk about individuals, people. People are citizens, maybe small business owners, maybe they're employees, maybe they're elected members. And that's at the LGSF conference last week, and I heard us talk about having different portals for different people. Why do we need to do that? Why not have one place to go, and this idea of personas where you work out, where you know who they are, and you can start to offer services that relate to who they are and how they, who they are and what they do. Okay? That's the idea there. The strategy, we're going to come back soon and talk about strategy in a moment, is so important. We're going to give you some ideas as to just to reflect on. Maybe you've already got all these things covered, maybe you haven't. Technology, we've talked about how important that is. Services, we are thinking about this end-to-end, rethinking that from a digital perspective. And then skills we've talked about. Those things all have to be considered. I mean, obviously, we provide technology, but we know we are a small part in a much bigger picture.
So how many people here think has a single view of a citizen across the entire local authority? One place where the information about that person is stored. And anyone thinks that a citizen has a single view of how you operate, like can navigate your organisation seamlessly? No. Yeah. So, to make that happen, there's lots of things that get talked about. Like all these circles represent huge pieces of work. From comms tools to personalisation, safety and security, single login, CRM, portal, search tool, database, infill, web properties, business and citizen profiles, UX and design. All of those things are massive things on their own. Now, when you look at that plethora of things, not many people pick out the two that we've focused on. That's the two most important things. And what we've done is we've focused on the portal and the search tool. Now, why have we done that? It's because I was talking earlier about how I browsed through that beautiful website and I end up on a My E-account portal. It doesn't make much sense to me. It doesn't have much information. It's just got some forms that I found very difficult to operate. And I lose interest and I go to the centre or whatever. But if you think of the portal as the place where the transactions are happening, and if you think of a search engine, what search is in the top right-hand corner of the search box? You think of search as something that can pull information from different sources around your authority, from the website, from internal databases, from all the different things that someone might need to know when they're going through a transaction on the portal, things to help them navigate the portal. And it can actually pull and personalise that information depending on what the person's doing. Right, so if you think of personalisations, people often think of it in terms of marketing, like, if you bought dog food last week, you want dog food this week. It's not like that with this. It's about, if I'm going through a parking permit, it might pull out information about permit restrictions in my area over the next 6 months, or how to request a permit to get a removals van, or something like that, parked outside my house, or whatever it is. You can go and find that information and do personalisation that way. So in-context information delivered straight to the user. And because we're using a search algorithm to do it, so a search engine, thinking of search in a completely different way, you don't have to go and program all that stuff yourself, right? Personalisation got a really bad name because people have to go and make all these hierarchies of decisions, like if this, then that, blah, 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 blah. If we use an algorithm to do it, it can go and find the stuff and learn what works and what doesn't. So the best search engines actually learn from people's behaviour and improve over time as well. I've got a great example of this. So I've said this story a million times, but I went for my 40th birthday. I went to New Orleans, right? And I was looking at the tourism website there. It's all organised by the different boroughs of New Orleans, so the different areas of it. And I didn't know where the things I wanted to do were, so I had to go and do some reading to be able to use their website. which there's some great information on there, but I couldn't actually navigate it. I didn't know what to do. You look at this thing that, a tourism site that we've designed, which is discovertasmania.com. And you go there and you type in, at the very beginning, there's a massive search box there. And you say, I want to go surfing. And it brings up all the different stuff that you might want to do in Tasmania around that activity, rather than having to navigate where those locations might be when you don't know anything about the island that you're going to. So it's flipping it on its head. It's when the information find the person, rather than then having to go and search through all of these different things that might end up on your homepage. And with my local government homepage, it's clearly, you can see all the departments you want them to be on it, because they're all there. I can't make head or tail of it. It's very, very difficult to navigate. And I've been in this business for 16 years. So by flipping it on its head and asking the person what they want and delivering a personalised experience through search, we can actually make this interaction a lot easier without burdening the staff at council too heavily.
So, another question. Are you actively, in terms of your digital first, or whatever you call it, strategies, are you looking to the commercial sector, for example, online retailers, to influence what you're doing in government? In any way, shape or form, hands up. Okay, not that many. Does that mean, let me ask you a slightly provocative question. Who here would say, would be thinking, I don't really care what they're doing? Hands up. No? That was great enough to do that. So I'm just curious why there's what's in the gap. I mean, Stephen just talked about personalisation. I mean, and I talked about personas a moment ago. I mean, all of us are related to government. Some of you guys, or a lot of your employees, I'm obviously we're suppliers. But as employees and as suppliers, we're all also consumers. We're all on Amazon or eBay or whatever, and we all, interact with websites like that, and we all get experience personalisation today. So, picking up Steve's point about information or services finding the individual, that's what happens on Amazon today. It promotes things like DVDs or Blu-rays or whatever, it's like that, a lot of stuff, and it tries to suggest things based on what I've done before. That's one of the ideas that we can bring to government now. Several where we're using that idea of personalisation, similar idea, but instead of products, we're pushing information and services. And that's the idea where, again, Steve mentioned this, the citizen isn't having to go and look for this information, it's finding them. Of course, that all comes back to knowing who that individual is. And there's a whole discussion I can make on that, which I'll try and get in within the time in a moment or two. So, but in terms of strategy, and again, it's easy for me to stand up here and say, this is what is wrong with the strategies. Of course, again, I'm more often than not, I'm playing back what I hear from yourselves, albeit there's a mismatch of what's happening in the States and in Canada and so on as well there. So this is not me telling, saying this is what's wrong, you should get this right. We're all part of this getting it fixed. But the first one's about, some strategies are focused just on technology. Some aren't. So typically, what I see some councils, they're business-led and some councils are IT-led. And the difference is very clear. Right? I can see it day as night. And you can see over a period of time the outcomes and the differences in the outcomes being achieved as well. So there's obviously an issue there. And integration is one part of which was mentioned. I was quite surprised at the awareness of how big an issue that is one of the considerations of that. Another one is this idea of strategies being defined in ivory towers. I mean, Steve's going to talk in a moment or two about this whole engagement process, transformation process, because it does involve hearts and minds. It does involve, you can't just have one person who says this is the way it should be, and then everyone in your organisation just follows. So there's a lot of change required. We talked about, it was commented earlier about end-to-end process. So that does require organisational change. Digital first strategy, a big part of it is about organisational change. That is not easy, and that does take time. And this last one again goes back to this idea of the invisible government. I'm going to use that phrase now more and more actually, where customers shouldn't have to understand how you're structured. In fact, if they don't understand and you're making assumptions about that, it's going to be hard for them to interact with you, and you might again end up with picking up the phone and then you've sort of lost and you're back to square one. So those are things to think about. There is just one thought there about the personas in my account and so on. So one question. So Estonia, they have the national ID, And of course, we all know where that ended up here in this country. So gov.verify, of course, has been talked about, and that is certainly an important way to get the various, the online services we have joined up. Who here today is using gov.verify? Hands up. You're live with it?
I'm a verified provider for the Cabinet Office.
Oh, you're a provider. Okay, I thought about so actual local authorities actually using it, considering who here is using it, hands up.
It's not available. It's not available.
It's not available. So that's why I'm never quite sure. You see all these press releases like so is coming. So okay. So once these things are released, I think things will start to improve a little bit. But again, just to be clear, Scotland already has been live with my account for about 2 years. Australia's been live for 3-4 years. I heard with the GDS comment earlier. I'm thinking maybe GDS could learn from the Australian government actually as well. So there's something about that. The sooner we get to having a single account that a citizen can log in with and understand the personas and so on, the better. As I say, Scotland's ahead. It frustrates me that in England we're so far behind Scotland. Not that I have any particular preference over either country. We're all one. But there's an opportunity there if we just move fast enough and get down that track. The other thing as well, just the final point in this in terms of strategy, don't think of your customer just as someone out there you're trying to get to use the website versus make a phone call. There is something about getting customers involved, getting them to this idea of trust. There was a meeting on Tuesday which Eddie was chairing here in London again as well. And they talked about the lack of trust between customers and government. There's something about if you can get customers to trust you as local authorities, you can get them to give you more information, their information, and in turn their ability to access services will be better. This idea of value exchange, you give me this and I'll give you that in return. So again, that's something that we've been working with a few customers of ours with, and if you want to know more about that or any of the other topics we're talking about, come and see us at the stand.
So how many people here have implemented a technology without thinking about any wider implications or strategy around that piece of technology? It's been a point solution, just bought it and done it. No? That's impressive, or at least one admit it. Okay. It's really interesting actually. One of the things in my earlier presentation, when I was talking about that survey that we did, there was a mix of 50% comms, marketing, business type people and 50% IT people. And a slide that we've added to the deck, which we'll send around, it shows you that the answer to the question, what is the most important thing you're doing this year? The comms, marketing, business people have number one, integrating platforms and systems. And the IT people had improving the 360-degree customer experience. And I was like, guys, they've got it wrong. The labels are wrong or something. This is stupid, doesn't make sense. But I triple-checked it, and I swear that's what it is. And to me, that's it's a very encouraging sign that actually digital transformation is in the groundwork's there to make it happen. Because one of the main things it requires is cross-departmental understanding of each other's goals and buying into each other's goals and working on together. They were saying we walked into an organisation, you can see which ones are business-led and which ones are IT-led. We walk into an organisation as well, and you can see which strategy work's going to be easy because there's a council of leaders who are leading it, and which one's going to be hard because one person's made up their mind to do it, and we've got to convince everybody else with him or her. And that's a very easy thing to pick up on. So the main thing in doing the research piece up front is actually, it's not only to informing your decision making, seeing you're correct about your assumptions, that kind of thing, but it's also getting buy-in, because in research, many people have to be involved in it. So all the departments, they all have to get involved. They all have to be involved in asking the questions, getting the answers from their constituents, their team members. And it actually brings the organisation together around a common theme, common deliverable. From that research, we can then design a solutions and delivery roadmap, but hand in hand with that has to be a council of leaders who are going to lead a cross-departmental change management program. And the third piece, which is often forgotten about, is governance and promotion. So, having done all this work, we've researched what the citizen wants, we've decided how we're going to deliver it, the solutions we're going to need, and we've got a council of leaders to lead it, and then it goes out there. We declare victory too early, because it's like a CRM platform, it's only as good as the information that goes into it. So without a governance program to govern how that then runs in practice, it then starts to fall apart. Equally, if you put a service online and don't promote it, no one's going to know about it. So that governance promotion piece is just as important as the upfront research. So the research we do is, I'm sure you've seen these headings before. We do citizen research, so creating the personas, the journeys, that kind of thing. Internal research, asking the strategic questions, asking the service delivery questions. And then external research, so peers, sector-specific results, even other technology trends outside the sector itself. From that research, we then produce a solutions and delivery roadmap. I won't go through all of those headings, but I'll pick out a couple. We've touched on this a number of times today, but the journey map's important, but so is then the staff training and recruitment, and dealing with change fatigue, the fear of change, and people who don't want to change their roles and interact with the new way of doing things. Then there's a migration phase and the costing, contingency and all that kind of thing, and a communication plan across the organisation as well. Then the governance promotion piece, governance and permissions, the content that we're going to need, how much new content needs to be created, how much needs to be updated, how much do we retire? Because it's funny, our search tool also goes through and produces a list of stuff that hasn't been read in 2 years. And you'd be surprised, almost 80% of the content that's there has never been touched in 2 years. And we can just ditch that. Why migrate all that to a new platform? It doesn't make any sense. It can also check the readability of the content, so it tells you what age you need to be to better understand it. So if you're pitching something at 12 to 18-year-olds, but you need to be a PhD professor to read it, it's not going to work. So it'll tell you that kind of thing as well. Then we design a promotion plan, and a promotion doesn't have to be big advertising budgets or anything like that, but just might even be within the website itself, advertising new content and different pages that have come up, suggesting related content, that kind of thing. Does that make sense? Now, doing all of this on your own, stitching together a whole heap of systems and designing this program requires a lot of skills and a lot of work. There are shortcuts though. There are vendors like Squiz and there's others out there that are providing a holistic solution that's been tried and tested across a number of organisations, and will give you a head start in some of this. And so here's the components of what we deliver. I'm sure you can compare it to others. So from the Squiz side, we provide the search solution that I've talked about, the content management solution, cloud offering that we've custom built for governments that we can comply with every regulation and every different standard you need, right up to IL3 if we need to. And then a whole bunch of UX design, implementation and strategy services as well to make all of that happen for you. On the variant panel side,
next slide, actually.
okay, yeah.
So this represents, from a technology standpoint, about the solution that Variant and Squiz bring together. This, you just conscious of time, this is something that I sat down 18 months ago and planned an 3-year vision of where I needed the company to be from a government perspective, and we simply weren't going to get there quickly enough. We talked about skills. I shared with you, this is as much about us as it is about you. I looked at the skills side and thought, we just don't have the kind of people that the Squiz have to do the kind of things we want to do. So we talked about a lot of concepts and ideas, but almost everything we talked about is real today. I often joke when I go into the Squiz London office, I see all these kind of design people with big glasses, and there's a dog running around, there's a green area at the back. Seriously, sit there in a fake lawn and work with their Apple Macs. It's those kinds of people. We don't have those kind of people. You probably don't have those kind of people too, or you might have one or two of them. They have loads of them. And we get those people together with our people, we create some pretty amazing things. And I think, and whether it's with us or with somebody else, it's those kind of, when we talk about skills, that's kind of just one example of what we mean. To bring all this together and have a pre-interview. We met almost a year ago, after I was looking for about a year for, I thought I was looking for 2 companies, maybe 3. I ended up finding some technologies we needed, but also the skills as well, and hosting, cloud, under one roof. So this is an integrated product we've been working on, a solution we've been working on for over a year, and we announced it in January this year. So I won't go through the individual pieces, but it's basically bringing digital and the other components together in one platform. So I mean, just very briefly then, this after the little sales pitch. This last one is about just back to organisational structure. So I think Steve mentioned this in his earlier presentation. You know, are we there yet? No one's there yet. If you think about it, we've all been doing, you've all been doing, we've been doing the same. In Bernd, we've been working in the contact centre space, and you have, in terms of customer interactions, for what, 30, 40 years. We've all got pretty good at it. Now digital, you know, started. I've been at these conferences or conferences like them for the last, what, 5 or 6 years. I remember one that I spoke at 5 years ago. I had a title called Digital by Exclusion, because quite a lot of councils were still against the idea of pushing people proactively to the web. It wasn't that long ago that there was still quite a lot of resistance. Fast forward to today, it's a different thing, but it's still early days, early doors as we say. There's a lot of opportunity. We're getting a crowd, talk about climbing a mountain, and you get to the first horizon, you see it, and you get to the top, and you've got, you know, quite a bit of channel shift. But I said, well, how do we get to the next stage? Because it's about keeping people online. And keeping the organisation aligned, because you get some successes, you get some setbacks, and there's a bit of herding cats going on. So then it's back to leadership. So we have seen, I'm sure you have as well, maybe you've already appointed somebody, this idea of a chief, I'm not going to ask the comments to go on, a chief, missed that, citizen experience officer, or maybe it's a chief digital officer, or maybe it's a transformation executive director, or whatever, some person who's responsible for the overall digital strategy, or whatever you call it, and driving that change throughout the organisation. And of course, it won't just be one person, because if it is just one person, it's going to be a hell of a job. They're going to have to get hearts and minds and so on as well. But that person has to be fairly senior and very linked into the chief executive and have their support as well. So again, I'm sure many of you have that person in place, but if you don't, you can do little have successes here, there, and everywhere, but unless you've got that top-down support on an ongoing basis, because this is a journey, you'll not ultimately be successful. So just, you know, that's sort of last one.
As I said before, there's a digitalcitizen.squiz.net. There's a whole heap of white papers, case studies, blogs, materials on there that it's free to download to help you with your journey. I think we've got time for a couple of questions. If everyone has any.
You mentioned in your talk earlier, one of the elements around governance, getting buy-in at the top and things like that. We also talked about technology as a catalyst as opposed to but my experience is that a lot of councils tend to think of these changes as one-off program or big changes that fix everything and move on from there. What's your experience of changing that thinking to maybe, for a better word, agile, understanding it's a journey, understanding that things change and a change of mindset and way of doing things rather than just doing it differently?
Yes, our process has been, so we actually tried to push agile delivery and partnerships into government over the last few years. And of course, with procurement restrictions and stuff, it doesn't actually work that way in practice. So what we've decided needs to happen is we need a set of set deliverables that has a price, with a budget set aside to tackle any of the things along the journey that come up that surprise us, so that we're not having to reallocate budgets and things like that. So there can be an agile component, but it can't all be agile. And the second thing we say is, like, yes, this is a 6-month engagement, but whether it goes on with us or with somebody else, this is actually going to be years and years and years. And it's not just in the government sector, the commercial sector is the same. These banking transformations take 5 to 8 years. You know, we've seen one that took 8 years actually. So it is a journey. It's not a destination in itself. And along the way, you're learning heaps of things about how to change the organisation, and you're changing HR practices, you're changing recruitment practices, training practices. It touches every bit of the organisation. Until that work happens in your own organisation, you can't project the united front to the citizen, customer. So yeah, it's a journey. And, that's how we've tackled it so far. Fixed deliverables, but with an agile budget that cannot deal with surprises.
So I was going to say, what's actually experienced right now when you look at the numbers, procurement and payments looking out for your kind of services, how many are placed in a fixed tech on a fixed price, and how many are placed in agile?
Well, so in the commercial space, it's still only 50% agile. In the non-government organisations, we're starting to see some, like cultural institutions and things, there's some that have agile procurements. In the actual hardcore government space, no, we've got this sort of hybrid thing that's working, but nothing that's purely agile. Sorry. Yes.
What's been your approach to capturing customer demand and building the roadmap from what you spoke earlier about the citizens' views and feedback you capture from citizens? What's been your approach to capturing that?
So in terms of the Squiz approach, you can use other tools. Like we developed our own tool that's actually called Roadmap. It's all about gathering opinions and then ranking them and voting on them and that kind of thing. So we use that tool. There's other ideation tools they're called like that to collect the feedback, collect the research, and then rank and vote them on them depending on the organisational objectives. So we use a software tool we developed for that, but there are others. So it's all in the questions. So once we've asked the questions internally, we come up with a series of questions that we'll ask specific groups of citizens. And if the questions are engaging and they're thought-provoking, they're good enough, people tend to want to answer them. They're just kind of like, how do you rate the blue colour on our website? That doesn't work. But we have some truly things that people lead into, like leaseholding and stuff like that. How can we change this process to make your leaseholding experience with the council better? That kind of thing does get a lot of comment.
I guess my question follows on from the previous gentleman in terms of digital as an outcome, and government are used to buying things, and almost the analogy is, you'd love to buy holes, but you have to buy a drill. Holes are an outcome, drill is a necessity. So I guess we'd all like to say we want to be like Estonia, but that's a hard thing to buy. So to your previous point, do you find government procurement practices and frameworks and things are an inhibitor to where we want to go with digital?
I think the G Cloud was a huge step in the right direction. It's allowed us to have this hybrid model. There is some ability in there to have an agile aspect to it. You still have to have a fixed set of outcomes, as I said, but it does allow for you to have some agile budget as well to deal with things that crop up. So we found the G Cloud a really good addition to the contracting options we have. Yes. Over there.
Hi, you spoke a lot about the technology and the way it goes forward, but we need to think about the citizen within the UK. We are an ageing population, and actually within a lot of the ageing part of the population, there's an endemic scepticism around technology and using these ways forward. How are you able to overcome that with the technology to put that endemic scepticism to bed and get them to engage in it?
So I actually was referring to that a moment ago, where I got quite a lot of that sort of feedback. More of you shouldn't be doing this, we can't exclude people. Because of austerity, we now moved on from that conversation, so now it's moved on to how do we find other ways to give them access. So I always talk about my family as an example. I used to actually, again, I've talked about so many times, I used to put up a picture of my mum and my wife, and I would ask the audience, who is a technologically adept person and who's a technophobe? And everyone always picked my wife, and my mum was the technophobe. And it was the other way around. My wife, 5 years ago, hated, she still hates technology. I bought her an iPad for Christmas, I think it was 4 years ago. I videoed it because I knew how she was going to react to it, and she went ballistic when I bought her an iPad. And a year later, we were moving house, and I turned the broadband off, and she came in and started shouting at me for, why is the broadband not work? Why can't I get onto this website? And I started laughing at it, and that made it worse, because, why are you laughing at me? Because a year ago, you wouldn't have that thing in your hand, and how things have changed. So my mother, who's 80 now, I think, she's on Facebook. We email each other. I remember as well, my daughter, who was 7 at the time, Skyped her cousin in Uganda and conferenced in Granny, who was 76 at the time. And I'm thinking, okay, so there's a demographic there, but it isn't, not everyone's the same, right? There's differences. There's even differences even within my demographic where people still don't like technology. Then there's the other side of it, which is, I think you talk about this in one of my other presentations, is the idea of you may know someone who will never get onto the internet, but you may be that person that helps them access services online. So my mother-in-law, who will never use the internet, and I'm not going to convince her, I do things for her. So she did, and services need to be able to be set up to do that. So she needed a car MOT, so I did it online and just told her when to turn up, and she turned up. I gave her a piece of paper. That was it. So I'm not saying it answers every single situation, but there is definitely, the conversation obviously moved on, we are where we are, but there's still things and ways and means we can help people get online that aren't online by playing a role ourselves, which comes back to this whole idea of community, actually, as well. And that is a very important role that until this morning actually, I've been talking about community and this idea of social communities, but technology can support that. I've talked about this as one of these kind of, out there ideas that was on the slide a moment ago, communities top right, and people used to go, yeah, whatever. But actually, I do think that's another idea. Citizens helping themselves through online communities, a way of coordinating people, coordinating volunteers and so on. The people actually receiving the benefit might not be actually accessing the forum or the community, but it might be the people that are providing that support. So there's lots of things that can be done today, but one of them is about enabling the online services to let other people act on behalf of those people that can't access themselves.
I think what I'm talking about is skepticism. It may not be someone in that an older demographic being frightened of using technology, because as you say, moved on with technology. It's the skepticism about giving information to the government.
Oh, right. That comes back to trust. That comes back, and the idea there is value exchange. I mean, come and talk to me at the stand. I've got a lot to say about that. We're going to run out of time now. There's a lot of good conversation about that.
Talk about that for hours, but anyway, so, thank you all very much for your time. We're out of time now, so enjoy the next sessions. Thank you very much.